the forgiveness of sin, a kingdom not of this world, but the people were living under the oppression of the most powerful empire in history. They needed hope that touched their daily lives, not just their spiritual lives. And this difference, spiritual salvation versus national liberation, slowly became the dividing line inside the Jewish community itself. Some said, he truly is the Messiah. God is doing something new. All right? Others said, he is a great teacher, but this is not the restoration we've been waiting for. As time went on, that difference in expectations did not just disappear. It grew. And it grew because the world around them kept pushing the two groups in two different directions. Those who followed Jesus began to see his life, his teachings, his death, and his resurrection as the beginning of a new chapter in God's story. For them, the promises of Scripture were being fulfilled in a spiritual kingdom that welcomed all people, Jews and Gentiles, into one family. But to the other Jews, the promises of Scripture still pointed to something else, not a spiritual kingdom, but the visible restoration of Israel as a nation. So, even though both groups were reading the same scriptures, they were looking for different outcomes, and real life kept reinforcing the divide. Rome did not collapse. Foreign rule did not end. The political suffering continued. So those who did not accept Jesus as Messiah kept holding on to the hope that the real Messiah, a liberator, a restorer, will still come. Meanwhile, the followers of Jesus started spreading his message beyond Judea, beyond Galilee, and into the wider Roman world. And something unexpected happened. Gentiles began accepting the message in huge numbers. These were people who had no history of exile, no longing for a Davidic king, no memory of a temple-centered life. They embraced Jesus without the political expectations that shaped Jewish identity. And as Gentiles entered the movement, the center of gravity slowly shifted. The community around Jesus began to look less like a Jewish renewal movement and more like a global spiritual movement. This did not happen overnight. It happened step by step over decades, but each step widened the distance between two paths, okay? On one side, a Jewish community centered on Torah, covenant, and the hope of a future national restoration. On the other hand, a growing community centered on Jesus, open to all nations, and focused on spiritual transformation. Same roots, same scriptures, same starting point, but their missions, their experiences, and their expectations were pulling them in different directions. And as those two directions became clearer, something happened that neither group could ignore. An event so massive, so traumatic, that it forced every Jewish community to rethink what it meant to follow God. That moment was the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD. Up to that point, even with disagreements about Jesus, both groups were still connected to the same spiritual home.